At whose university?
Our university.
Whose university? Whose university?
That also owns those same hotels that are paying poverty wages to these hotel workers. And UC is invested in Blackstone, where from our own pension, and they use the money from our own pockets to fund the opposition to initiatives such as the rent control initiative that we lost because of their money that they funded against that. They're using our money from our pensions to fund important initiatives that would support our working brothers and sisters. So it's really important that we create unity among all workers, all union and non-union workers, and the issue of Palestine is central to that. What's happening in Palestine is a genocide, and that is not up for debate. If our union leaders continue to stay silent and insist on just prioritizing our contract and pretend that it is even moral to shelve the issue of genocide or to put it on hold, they should really rethink their priorities. I would say, just like we're telling UCSF to reset their priorities, I am telling our union leadership that they need to reset their priorities as well and include the issue of Palestine. It is our money, and it is Israeli bonds that UCSF invests in that is going towards genocide. We are healthcare workers. Healthcare workers have been killed by abominable rates in Gaza. Children in Gaza have the highest rate of child amputees in the world. Our healthcare workers here know what that's about when people lose their limbs. People want to say that it started on October 7th. No, it did not. People want to say that why did they go that route? The route of fighting against the siege and trying to get out of the 17-year siege. What is a siege? Didn't our Jewish brothers and sisters fight to get out of the Warsaw Ghetto? Aren't they heroes? They're my heroes. So why should Palestinians have to tolerate abominable conditions in a 17-year siege that didn't allow and restricted food and water, and now they're facing forced starvation? Our union members, such as dietitians, nutritionists, they know what starvation causes on a human body, more so on a child. Pregnant women, women giving birth, having C-sections without anesthesia. They don't even have enough water and food to nurse their babies. Their newborns are dying. So I'm hoping that any one of you who feels that wants to join us in pushing our union leadership to defend us and we defend each other. One of our doctors, Rupa, has been suspended. And we've had politicians such as Scott Wiener attacking her. We've had the Canary Mission threatening her. Another doctor, Palestinian doctor, also has had some of his speeches and his lectures canceled. We've had nurses who've been attacked as well and who've been suspended just for wearing a Palestinian button, a watermelon button. We need to stand together. Palestinian trade unions are asking for our solidarity. The Palestinian Federation of Trade Unions is asking for our solidarity in action by breaking ties with Histadrut. Histadrut is a Zionist so-called trade union which has stolen more than $2 billion out of the pockets of of workers in Palestine, because they don't represent them, but they make them pay dues for services that they don't have access to. They've also been funding the IDF reservists by paying the equivalent of 1 vacation day per month to the Israeli government to fund the IDF reservists who are committing genocide in Gaza and in Palestine. In 2018, there was a great March of Return where unarmed protesters were coming up to the border of Gaza to try to get out, to have the right of return. They were sniped, 30,000 wounded. There was such a high level of amputees at that time because their knees were being targeted by Israeli snipers and their eyes as well. And they were unarmed. So nobody can say that they went for non-peaceful means. The movement for Palestine, for a free Palestine, with equality for all, which includes Jewish people, Muslims, and Christians in one state, a one-state solution with equality for all, has to be the most basic principle that our unions stand up for. And that means an end to apartheid, to have a teach-in.
Hey, my name is Rosa. I am a nurse with CNA and NU. I'm here on the strike line joining all my union siblings. All of these people that I see here need our support and our solidarity. They're hardworking. They deserve a fair contract. They deserve to be respected. They deserve for UC not to give them a pittance of, a tiny bit of a raise, but to actually see them as human beings and actually take into consideration that all these people that work here sacrifice a lot to come and work here. Yes, it's a great place to work, but we're the ones that make it great. It's our colleagues that we run into every single day. It's the support crews. It's the people that come into my room and help me and answer my questions and are there every day for me and the patients. So they deserve the respect. UC, do the right thing. Give them exactly what they're asking for in the contract. You can give your regents raises. You can give all of these hard-working people a raise.
What is the relationship of UC to Israel and what's going on with the genocide?
Well, that's a deep. You can go in deep. So a lot of our investments in our pensions, some that we control and some that we don't, are embedded in the entire system of complicity. So companies like Blackstone or companies like L3 Harris or any type of these military industrial companies are investing money from either the taxpayers, from our wages, things that we put into the pension that they're making interest off, is going and it's complicit in genocide. If you want to look up more information, you can look up the Watermelon Index. You can look up UC, and you can see exactly where that complicity lies and exactly the companies that are complicit. I'd like to point out the military complex doesn't end at the military. Our police forces are highly militarized. Just recently, they just passed a bill to give millions of dollars in military equipment. Why do university police officers need military-grade equipment? These are young students that are coming to these schools that in various ages, but from marginalized communities, and we're replicating the exact incarceration system that they see in their communities right there on their campuses. We have seen the police brutalize students. We have seen students repressed for their freedom of speech and the ability to organize and the ability to protest. That's what we send our young learners for, to get educated and to shake up the world, to envision a world where we're all equal and we have a voice and there is actually a semblance of democracy. What we're seeing right now is one of the most horrible forms of repression that is leaking in towards so many areas of the nation. I don't think, if we look back in the history books, the last time we saw something as such egregious was in the civil rights era and then also McCarthyism.
Okay, thank you. And what can people do who want to support this struggle?
If you want to support, look up Bay Area Labor for Palestine. Also look up Healthcare Workers for Palestine, Bay Area. Figure out how you can plug in. There's definitely a bunch of Bay Area orgs that you can get connected to. But look up a couple of things. The Watermelon Index. Look up what complicity and genocide actually means. Look up where you're investing your money. That's a great place to start.
And the unions, AFSCME 3299, UPTE, the CNA, you're a member of CNA. Where are they? Because unions all over the world have protested the genocide. They've had marches, they've had rallies. It seems like U.S. unions don't think that the issue of what's going on with the genocide is something that should be brought up and they should take a position. I know the SEIU opposed the more arms to Israel, but it seems like most unions here are silent on that. Are they separated in their negotiations? It's a disconnect.
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be more education. There needs to be more conversations. We're hearing from the Palestinian labor unions exactly what they're asking for, and they definitely want an arms embargo. They want us to have more conversations, but they want us to be more action-oriented, meaning we can't just put out statements and expect that that's what's going to do the work. We have to actually do the work, and that means grassroots organizing. That means looking at who we organize with here in the Bay Area. What are they asking for? What is the support that they need? There's definitely more that unions can do. We have a lot of power in unions, and rank and file really needs to have those conversations, move things along, shake things up. Unions are there for a purpose. They're our voice. And if we can't make the connections between marginalized communities and what's happening globally as a health issue, this is not a humanitarian issue. This is genocide. There is no red line with that.
And the university has been silent about the bombing of hospitals, the murder of healthcare workers, the torture, murder, arrest of healthcare workers. Why are they so silent?
I could say a lot more on that. I'm not going to say it. But yeah, how is it that we can pretend to be a global health equity organization and not taking consideration that there's thousands of children that are now amputees, that there's no healthcare system in Gaza, none at all. There is none. So you can't be silent on that.
They have refused to do so. There's also an update that I want to give regarding what happened at the San Diego UPTE Convention when we tried to present a resolution on Palestine on September 28th, 29th. We had delegates from UPTE Members for Palestine. I was not allowed to be an alternate, unfortunately, although I technically should have been. And also another member, John Smith, also was a delegate, an alternate, and they were not allowed to be an alternate either. UPTE leadership at the convention pulled out a rule, a supposed rule about a 60-day deadline, that didn't exist. That 60 days to be able to hand in resolutions only applies to amendments to the Constitution, not for resolutions. So I know because I've been part of UPTE conventions for many years now. So now I am transferring this to a reading of our UPTE resolution on the 2nd of June of 2021, which was passed and which has been taken off of the website, and we're demanding that UPTE leadership put it back up on the website. And Caitlin Andrews, clinical social worker, and Gian Smith, clinical social worker, will be reading this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Whereas Israel received $961 million in foreign aid from U.S. to Israel, which translates to $367 in aid per individual. Nearly all the U.S. bilateral aid given to Israel is military assistance. Whereas in September 2016, representatives of the two governments assented to a memorandum of understanding pertaining to the military aid to be given to Israel from the fiscal year 2019 to the fiscal year 2028. The agreement requires the U.S. allocate $38 billion to U.S. in military aid. It is the single largest pledge made by the U.S. in history. Whereas the conflict is a one-sided assault on defenseless Palestinian citizens by overwhelming military force, resulting in an obscene difference in the rate at which people are being killed. Tens killed on one side, hundreds killed on the other, thousands killed on the other. Whereas Israel has targeted and destroyed hospitals, more than 1,300 housing units and news agencies, killing women and children in targeted airstrikes in violation of international law. Whereas this conflict would be impossible without the United States' weapons and support, creating humanitarian catastrophes, acknowledged time and again by international observers. Whereas the Palestinian people face restrictions to residency rights, citizenship, civil rights, freedom of movement, allocation of land and resources, access to water, electricity, granting of building permits, and other services.
Whereas Israel has turned Gaza into an open-air prison by controlling everything and everyone that is allowed to come in and out of the area, including by air and by sea. The population of Gaza Strip is more than 50% children. 97% of the water in Gaza is unfit for human consumption. And the Gaza Strip was said to be unlivable by 2020 by the United Nations. Whereas our current social and economic reforms achieved by labor struggle are on the chopping block, as our unions are under attack under the premise of austerity, while our government sends $10 million a day to support the Israeli military apparatus. Whereas the AFL-CIO has supported the Israeli state by purchasing bonds from Israel. Therefore, be it resolved that UPTE CWA 9119 demands that the AFL-CIO divest from the Israeli state in terms of financial support, in the forms of bonds and other political support, especially in weapons manufacturing. Be it further resolved that UPTE CWA 9119 expresses its solidarity with the Palestinians' call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, inspired by the movement that helped end apartheid in South Africa, which UCSF adhered to. Be it further resolved that UPTE CWA 9119 will call on labor bodies to divest from Israel bonds, to cut ties with Histradut, Israel's racist labor federation that aggressively discriminates against Arab workers. And be it further resolved that UPTE CWA 9119 demands AFL-CIO and labor officials to make public the exact amount of money it spends using union members' pension funds in State of Israel bonds. And be it further resolved that UPTE CWA 9119 will continue to stand in solidarity with dock workers in Italy, South Africa, India, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, the US West Coast, and elsewhere, who refuse to handle military equipment and weapons or any other cargo destined for Israel and apartheid. Be it further resolved that UPTE support the CWA in moving to stand with the demands of Palestinian labor in solidarity for full human rights recognized for all people under the UN agreements, pressing elected officials and its networks to lobby the US government to end all aid to Israel until Israel complies with international law as it relates to the treatment of occupied territories and Arab citizens, and dismantles all form of supremacy and all forms of systemic domination and oppression and systemically repression of Palestinians, and to end the persecution of Palestinians. This is a resolution that was passed by UPTE CWA 9119, our union, and then taken down from the website. When was it taken down? After the new leadership came in, as the genocide increased, this was taken down from the website.
We have repeatedly asked our union leaders and executive committee. We have repeatedly asked our union leaders and executive committee to. I can't because of that. To put it back up, but not only that, we should call attention to the fact that we went to our union's convention, and unfortunately, there hasn't been enough education among our members regarding Palestine, and there was a serious issue regarding the rule that they implemented in not allowing for any discussion of the resolution that we presented then. They imposed a 60-day rule to hand in resolutions, which was not, which is a 60-day rule that only applies to amendments to the Constitution, not to resolutions. And unfortunately, we had a 2/3 vote that voted against even considering the resolution on Palestine, which I found to be very disappointing, very harmful to the union movement, that we would have a union leadership try to basically not allow for any, not even any discussion for that, and implement such a rule of not even allowing any conversation regarding that. And that was completely undemocratic, and it was what you would consider, I would consider, anti-constitutional of our own union's constitution. This happened during an ongoing genocide. This is happening now. It's live streamed. When people hear the word genocide, maybe people don't realize, but if we were to imagine this whole hospital complex around us completely destroyed, bombed out completely. Let's try to put ourselves in the position of people in Gaza right now. This whole complex around us would be completely obliterated, left rubble, and there will be thousands of people stuck under the rubble that have still not been able to be recovered. Thousands of families. There is a new term that's being used in the humanitarian agencies. WCNSF. Wounded Child No Surviving Family Member. That is a new term that has been created by the humanitarian aid agencies because of the devastation that has been occurring against children in Gaza, which, by the way, in Gaza has 70% women and children. Of the people who have been killed have been 70% women and children. Also what happens to UCSF workers who speak out about this? There was an article recently put out by The Intercept that details very clearly. It's called No Room for Emergency. San Francisco's biggest hospital system. Don't talk about Palestine. We've had doctors who have been suspended, doctors who's been, care director who was fired for speaking up about Palestine. This is the direct suppression of free speech. And in fact, if we're to look at our brothers and sisters in the UAW who were attacked, well, many workers were attacked, but the UAW in particular, the research graduates and student workers were attacked at UCLA and attacked at UC Santa Cruz. They called for a ULP strike, and PERB Public Employee Relations Board voted twice in favor of that because it was an unfair labor practice strike based on a free speech violation. It was not based on a contract, so they could strike. But UC went outside of the Personal Employee Relations Board and got a judge from the Orange County to allow them to do that. So yes, so now we're hearing our leaders speak about short staffing, which is very important, yes, and all those different things, but we need to tie those issues together because our money is going towards Israel instead of going towards workers here. That's what's going on. Our money is going towards Israel. Recently, our own Congress voted to send billions of dollars to Israel. And UC is part of that. There was a University of California People's Tribunal recently on November 11th and 12th, which it was very clearly outlined the level of complicity that UC has with regard to the genocide and the apartheid in Palestine. We already have the experience of South Africa, where UC was definitely on the wrong side of that one, so you'd think that they would have learned something by now, right? You want to say something? To Haged's speech? Oh, good. Okay, so we're going to try to move everything to where the chancellors are. Where is that? Huh? Pritzker building. We're going to move ourselves over there so that we can also be present there and confront Haged's complicity. And we are part of this union movement. And we invite you all to sign up and get information regarding our activities, because we really do need to speak up and we need to bring this to CWA, our national, which is directly linked to the AFL-CIO's complicity in supporting Israel. And there have been members of CWA, which we are also a part of, have been, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're inviting everybody here to join us over at the Pritzker building, where we're going to be over there as well. Okay, thank you so much. Good. Haged, you're no good. Treat UC workers like you should, and stop attacking workers and students for speaking up about Palestine. Free speech is a right under the U.S. Constitution.